Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Green Factor, a show where we talk about green design and the business of sustainability. So, happy New Year's, guys. This is the first episode of 2023 of The Green Factor. It's episode 70. So, I've been doing this more than 70 times already. So, on this year, we have a very special guest, a friend of mine, Mr. Kuhan. Hi, Kuhan.
Hello, hi Harit.
So we'll be talking today about a topic that is quite close to my heart, which is empowering the B40. So I think before we go into the topics, for the benefits of our viewers and listeners, can you share a little bit about your background or your journey?
All right, thank you, Harit. And first and foremost, congratulations on your 70th episode. And at the same time, I'm honored to start the year for you. And I hope that 2023 will be a great year for the Green Factor. Just a little bit of an introduction. My name is Kuhan. I'm an engineer by profession. At the same time, out of passion, I've set up a social enterprise called Pepper Labs. And Pepper Labs' primary goal when we began was to empower at-risk youths through F&B, and that's how we started Masala Wheels. And if you have not heard about Masala Wheels, it's a F&B brand that is positioned in Petaling Jaya and also Damansara City Mall. We have got two outlets there. And along the way, as the impact grew larger, then we started to scale up into families, B40 families, and also B40 youths, not only just focusing on at-risk youths. And that's how the other subsidiaries came about, which includes Pepper Cloud, digital, social, and mobile food.my. So the entire social enterprise has been built upon empowering B40 communities holistically.
Awesome, awesome. So, Kuhan have the company or the stuff that you do have received a lot of awards and all that. So, for me, I wanted to talk about this because it's a quite an issue in Malaysia. So, before we go into empowering them, can you just share a little bit about what are the current issues for the B40?
All right. Okay. So I think the primary issue that we are currently seeing is that post COVID, quite a lot of the M40 communities have actually fallen into B40. So there's actually now a larger pool of B40 communities that needs to be empowered. Number two, this is an issue that is quite prevalent in Malaysia in the sense that many of the models that are being discussed to empower them, or many of the programs that are being rolled out to empower the communities, are not actually bottom driven, but they are mostly top driven. So some of the models do not fit them, and they tend to actually be they tend to undergo these specific interventions and finally drop out and bring down the success rate of empowerment. So these are actually two of the prevalent issues. And the third one is accessibility to the communities. The communities, there are many organizations working with B40, but one thing that remains a challenge is working closely with them for long term. Has quite a few programs very short term or specific programs. So when it comes to accessibility to B40, they tend to take a step back because they tend to see us as short term partners and not there to actually help them improve their lives. So that's why organizations have to actually spend more time in terms of building that trust and building that confidence, and then bringing in more partners. So one of the third issue that remains prevalent is building an integrated approach holistically for a longer term, and that is another issue that we are trying to overcome over the period of time.
Understand. So, in terms of working with B40, like from our side, we have 80% of our staff are local youth. Um, so a lot of them come from the B40 communities as well. So that is one of the way how we are right now training them to upskill them so they can be a high skill workers as well, and they can move to the M40. So in terms of what you guys are doing, how are you guys actually work with the B40 communities and solving the problem?
Yep. Thank you so much, Harit. This is a great question. Number one is that our beneficiaries, as much as possible, we do not identify them as a B40 beneficiary per se, but we identify them as business partners. And how do we do it? Is because we have a large supply chain when it comes to F&B. So when we have two instances, right? For example, if we have a youth, the first thing we do is we try to plug them into the ecosystem in the hope that there is already an end goal, and the end goal would be either they set up their own micro enterprise or they move forward to a much more developed ecosystem or much more higher paying job. So that is always there in terms of the end goal. And when it comes to the communities, we actually treat them as entrepreneurs who we help from ground down up to the point where they scale up. And then what happens is that we turn them into our supply chain providers. So if we have an order that we can't take, or if we have a business order that we can't fulfill, then we actually have them as our partners to deliver the same quality, the same product, and the same expectations to our customers. So the first thing that how we're trying to solve here is we are treating them as a business partner, and we are putting an expectation which is very high on them. So in that sense, they also have to change their mindset. We actually shape them towards solving the problem together in this sense. Yeah.
Understand. So it's not a employee employer relationship per se, but it's more like vendor development and
Correct.
something like that,
Correct.
right?
Yeah, spot on. So we always speak about vendor development for established companies, but in this case, what we do is we do a vendor development at a very micro level. So, for instance, like recently we had, in the sense that we did not build a social enterprise to be a very competitive space among our micro entrepreneurs. So we have a wide range of customers who are buying food or are procuring services from us. And what we do is then we introduce these micro entrepreneurs to these customers. And I know some people might say, "Oh, okay, you are probably diluting your business, or you're probably losing your customer database." But in our sense, both of them are being fulfilled. One is our customers would actually remain committed to support us because they know that we are also bringing them a more impactful meal by empowering a community. On the other end, the community has a very good trust with us because we no longer treat them just as a beneficiary, but we treat them as a business partner and we give them access to our customers.
Awesome. I think there's a lot of things that you have to go through, right? Because it's not as easy as a traditional business where you just
Yes,
take people, train, and there's a
absolutely.
lot of challenge. There's a lot, even for us as well. The mindset, the mentality. So I think from your side, for your experience with working with them, what are the challenge?
Definitely. I think there are quite a lot of challenges, especially setting up a social enterprise itself is very challenging, right? Balancing, I always like to see social entrepreneurs as a juggling act between social impact and also business continuity. Sometimes we speak about profit, whether do we maximize profit to the extent that we have to find really good people in order to be able to maximize profit, or do you actually try to transform people, but of course that will also give you a lose out on your quality at times because there is a learning curve that they would take. So that is one of the biggest challenges that many social entrepreneurs would face. The second challenge here we see is that uh, expectations. I think during the initial stages of setting up this enterprise, we had quite high expectations. We expected them to perform to utmost was this utmost deliverables, just like any other businesses. And we had expected them to in terms of reacting to certain solutioning would be the same as other businesses. But over time, we learned that it will take time, and we just have to acknowledge the gaps and the downfalls there and address it to bring it up. So one of the greatest challenge is bringing them on board, transforming their mindset, then only moving forward to empowering them, and then only setting a certain expectations on them. But at the same time, not to be disappointed if there is an attrition or if there is a dropout. So many people sometimes look at the numbers, when they ask a social enterprise, how many people did you impact? In our case, in Pepper Labs, we would look at a smaller number, but having a deeper impact rather than a broader number, which is a touch and go impact. So that is a constant challenge when we bring it up to stakeholders as well. So when stakeholders ask, what is your scalability? But in our case, a challenge is, that personalized approach is which is more required, and transforming one's life more holistically is what is more important for us. So these are the two types of challenges. But apart from that, I think we have to always remember that uh, empowering a B40 is not just about giving them job, but it is also to look at other aspects of their life, from healthcare, from family care, from utilities to even housing. So that is something that we should have at the back of our mind.
So it's interesting you touch about some of the issues that we are doing, especially in terms of the quantity versus the quality. So this is, I think, the currently I think we need to talk about impact, because as social enterprise, a lot of the things that we do needs to be impactful, not just the bottom line, but also other social and environmental. So how do you choose? Because okay, of course the easiest is go for quantity, right? You have help 1,000 people, blah 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 blah, and that is always good for the presentation and all that.
Yes, PR and
But
so.
correct, correct. So that's why I think like if you can share a little bit on how you can measure the quality metrics, like I think from our side we want to see how out of the like we train hundreds of interns, apprentice and all that, so we like to see like how each of them continue after the program, right? So how do they get out of the B40 and all that. But it's a bit difficult because you have to measure in a long term and all that. So how do you approach the quality metrics?
Okay, very good question, Hari. The first thing is that in this case, right, initially we were looking at income growth. And I think that is also about educating our stakeholders. So the initial picture was always how, if you bring a micro entrepreneur on board of Pepper Labs, how much of leads or how much of sales did you help them generate? So it was all about numbers that you can quantify. But over time, then we started educating them that it's not only about the numbers, but you also have to look at different aspects. So we started developing a baseline assessment, which brings in multi-dimensional factors. And that's about 100 over questions on a survey, which we have actually developed it over the 7 years and 8 years of experience, where we don't only look at numbers anymore or income, but we also start looking at other aspects of life like personality. Because in the end of the day, once you train someone at a social enterprise, when they leave you, they might not leave with income or my growth. They might have a very plateaued income, or they might have an income that has dropped. But whatever that they have learned, the experience that they have learned, is what they are bringing forward in life to actually change or transform their lives elsewhere. And that should be motivated. But setting that foundation right is where we played a role. So that is what we're also trying to acknowledge. And this is where we started looking into different types of qualities. Quality of life from a more holistic approach. That includes, including recently we started adding digital aspects as well. So if the person that is coming, are they more confident in using digital e-wallets? A very simple thing, right? Digital social media to build their businesses. And if they are not, how can we build their confidence while they are with us? And when they leave us, for instance, would they be more, diving into more depth when they start using e-banking systems? We start talking about banking, digitalization, IR4. This is most of the time catered towards SMEs, and most of the time catered towards those with knowledge, the T20s and M40s who have a different awareness level when it comes to banking facilities and so these are types of aspects that we look to define quality. So we no longer say quality equals to income growth, but we say quality equals to a multi-dimensional aspect.
Awesome, awesome. So I think like the way you approach it is not more of because I think because social enterprise have evolved from an NGO model, so there's a lot of teething mentality. There's a lot of things. So I love that we are now looking at better metrics, and the way we approach impact is slightly different than just numbers because that is what NGO does, and that is what company does with CSR and all that. So we need to move in a way that is more sustainable as well. So that's why
Correct.
I think you have
Correct.
touched a little bit on some of the approach, but let's dive a little bit deeper in terms of the approaches that we can do in terms of empowering the B40.
Okay. So I give you a very simple approach that we are doing, right? Okay. This is something that we take pride in Pepper Labs. Why do stakeholders work with Pepper Labs is because of a principal anchor that we have. So we have built a social enterprise which is based on F&B, and we have scaled the social enterprise which brings in a seven-figure value on a yearly basis in terms of revenue. So they have a very sustainable ecosystem that has got a solid foundation. But the next question is then how do we build similar enterprises that we can actually spin off over time and turn them as franchises or micro franchises? And that's when we started to go into communities. We started to actually look into specific PPR communities, and we started to actually build community based entrepreneurship. Now, you might be asking me, how is it modeled upon? We actually built cloud kitchens for them. So cloud kitchens in the sense that now that you can order, for instance, today morning I was informed that one of our stakeholder, which is one of the Fortune 500 company, actually ordered from our cloud kitchen because they found that this cloud kitchen was actually much more closer to the point of delivery. So in this case, what happens now is the principal anchor is still masala wheels, but now the food that is being prepared for you might not come from masala wheels in Petaling Jaya, but it might come from PPR Kampung Limau, for instance, or PPR Kerinci in Pantai Dalam, because that is much more closer to KL Central. So now then comes to the question of how is this sustainable. The sustainability point of view over here is that now the community has a cloud kitchen, and they have actually built a community based entrepreneurship, and now they have come in a group to work for economic empowerment, and they are generating their own income. And how are they doing it is they are leveraging on a principal anchor business, which is our social enterprise, who gives them access to the other things that might seem a bit out of reach. For example, promotion, platforms to have their accounting sorted, and so then now this becomes like a social franchising concept and replicable to other locations as well.
So in a way, we need to find, even though it's quite difficult to scale it, but there are certain ways we can approach it, right?
You definitely can. So, very, very far thought, right? So, for example, if like the Green Carpenter, so you have a location here and you have your own set of SOPs that you follow, you have your own blueprints to follow. But the other thought process here is that probably in one of the PPRs, they might have a space just below the PPR that is underutilized. And then how Green Carpenter goes there and puts up a print and says that, now this would be my satellite office, and I will give you what is required to be a small scale carpentry. And then the community in that space would actually be empowered because they don't have to travel all the way to your main center. So that was the same thought process that we had. We said that the women can cook, but most of the time their struggles was traveling. They can't get their families to be taken care. So we said, no problem, we will bring Pepper Labs to your location, and we will set up the kitchens for you. It's just that you need to supply to us.
So it's like a like you said earlier lah. It's like a vendor, and then you also. I
Yep.
think just to share a little bit, that is exactly what we have been doing. Also, we do have
Lovely.
where we work with communities where they can be either refugees or like people that cannot move, especially during COVID. What we do is we try to work with them in a way we send stuff for them to process, so they can do it at their home and or a certain place that they can do together and that, and then we collect it. And I think this kind of approach is in a modern sense, it's like a like you say, it's a what satellite facility, right?
Office. Yes,
Yeah,
correct, correct.
it used to be called I can't remember what the term is, cottage industry. There's
Yeah,
a lot of
yeah,
things like for us,
yeah.
we see it as a decentralized manufacturing, where instead of
Yes,
everything is being focused in one space,
correct.
you have few places to release a lot of the pressure doing things at the factory, right? And I find it work during COVID, and that is one of the things that we see, like because manufacturing you cannot work if you're not at the factory, right? But
Yes,
there are ways to make it work, and because I was thinking that okay, designer they can work from home. A lot of people can work, but
correct.
manufacturing cannot, right? But actually they can. So that's why it's an interesting thing that you can do. Like maybe certain stuff that is not dusty, for example, you can do it somewhere and all that. So I'm seeing a lot of the innovation in terms of sustainability and even the social element of it. A lot has been expedited these past few years because of COVID. And
Yes.
I don't know from your side, how are you seeing this in terms of the progress? Because after COVID, I'm seeing like there's a lot of uptake of social enterprise, a lot of models that come out. So is that same for you guys as well?
Yeah. So I think number one is that initially we had an aspiration, right? We have SDG goals. We launched the SDG goals, and we said that let's strive to achieve these SDG goals. Some says by 2030, some says by 2050, but we all know now that it could even be 2100 whether we are still around. But these SDG goals might not be achieved unless there's a collective approach by organizations that undertake ESG or more responsibility on people and planet. So I think that's where social enterprises started coming about. And I think I totally agree with you, Harit, as well. Is after COVID, we did see more social enterprises and more research undertaken in this social innovation or social entrepreneurship space. And I think some of them also term it as inclusive business, just to accelerate the achievement of the SDG goals. And that's more of a collective framework or collective effort.
Mm. So I think the next question is if it's social enterprise, it's easy, not easy. You develop it, you launch it, and all that. It's in the from the start. So my
Yes.
next question is like, what about business that already started? So how does the business take part in helping with this cause?
Oh, lovely, lovely question. So I think there's two approaches to this, right? I've had businesses coming over and saying that how can they now pivot into a social enterprise? And I think during COVID, Pepper Labs, for instance, helped a bakery, a very famous bakery in Malaysia, to actually pivot into a social enterprise model. So that is one approach where businesses can always adopt a social entrepreneurship model and move forward. It's just changing the ethos of the company, changing the direction of the company, and adding in their own social impact goals. The second thing is that businesses can partner. I think one key takeaway from many conversations is that in order to achieve a good balance between planet, profit, and people, or even to achieve the SDG goals, partnerships are very important, and that's one of the reasons why they introduced the last SDG, right? So businesses can always partner up with social enterprises, can always partner up with civil society organizations in order to deliver impact, whether impact on social well-being or impact on environment. And this is where businesses can take part. These two things: one is either pivot as a social impact organization, or second one is remain as a business but partner up with impact organizations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think like that is one of the way we can do it, and the fastest as well. Partner up, right?
Fastest. Yes, yes. I think, simple thing like, for example, a business can always think, if you're procuring an item right now, are you procuring an item from an impact-driven organization, or are you procuring an item from a business? So it's just as simple as procuring your item from another impact-driven organization, which is the same, which is you're not disrupting your supply chain, you're just changing your vendor. But the beauty of it is you're adding a social impact in your business.
Correct. I think that is why the social enterprise model work is
Yeah.
it doesn't, because people always see like the initiative as CSR as something that take money out of the organization without giving anything, right? That used to be what CSR and all these companies are going into this space. But right now, with the help of social enterprise, there's a lot of ways where the company even benefit from it, or it doesn't change anything. Like you need to buy something, you need to buy food for your event, for example. But just by getting the food from a vendor that is practicing social model, you solve your problem, but at the same time you're creating impact. So it's like a no-brainer in a way.
Yes,
So
yes.
yeah, so that's why I feel like more businesses should explore this kind of business model, because the benefit is multifold. So I
Exactly,
think I
exactly.
love what you do, and that's why I bring you in to share what you do. And I think earlier part you've told what you do, but what is next? What is the future of what you guys are doing?
Yeah. But so one thing that we realized is that as a social enterprise, many people always have this notion or this perception that social enterprises are very localized. They tend to generate, very small income. They're not scalable. For all, they're not an investable model. So together with many other social enterprises, we have been trying to break this perception, and we went through an equity divestment in 2019. So that was our first point of valuation to take it forward. And when COVID hit us, we realized that we needed to reduce our assets, we needed to reduce physical presence, and increase our digital presence. So we started to go a lot online. We started to adopt more food technologies. We started to build in-house food techs as well. And as you see right now, as we speak in 2022, in partnerships with Meranti, we launched about 15 micro entrepreneurs adopting about 10 cloud kitchens, which serve as a satellite kitchen to Masala Wheels. And I think in 2023, what we are doing is we are coming up with a large scale model to build 10 community based enterprise models that would serve as cloud kitchen, but this time around partnering with a larger food tech. So we are going into the space of food tech. We are actually trying to prove a point that it is scalable, but not only that, you can actually scale with social impact and at the same time make a good profit. And that was proven from our own revenue, where 2022 actually demonstrated 300% of growth in our revenue as compared to 2021, by just reducing assets and increasing our digital presence. So the future plan would be to see more cloud kitchen present, and to see lesser physical presence of our businesses.
Awesome, awesome. Good news, good news. I think like on the note of how the business model of sustainability or ESG model works here in Malaysia, I also want to just share a little bit about our revenue in terms of last year for our green products. For 2022, we have increased 6 times the revenue compared to
Perfect.
2021. So there are a lot of value, there are a lot of money in this in doing the right thing. So we
Agree.
already live in an era where we have enough knowledge to make money and at the same time make the world better. So thank you
Yes.
very much, Kuhan, for
Thank
your
you.
effort as well, and I love to continue seeing how you guys grow. So we are at the end of the show. Thank you again, Kuhan, for your time. For our guests. If you like this episode, please share it. Thank you for your time. See you next week. And as always, have a green week ahead. Bye bye, guys.
Thank you, Harit.